Hey guys, I'm Donnie. I'm an alcoholic. Been sober since November 10th of 2015, and prior to that, I got sober on August 15th, and that ain't gonna work, of 2009. So my story is gonna kind of go into that. I appreciate what you had to say about me. I do try to say yes. The reason I said yes to this is because I just love to hear myself talk, to be honest. Only thing I love more than being of service of Alcoholics Anonymous is telling you what I did. And that's just the truth. I've been in Texas about 7 years. I grew up just outside of Boston, a little suburb of Boston called Stoughton. And, what was it like? What happened? And what's it like now? That's what we do when we're up here, right? And we get an hour to do it. And so what it was like, I'm 35. I was born in 1986. Had a pretty good upbringing, all things considered. It didn't feel that way necessarily when I was growing up. But having grown up, having heard a few fifth steps, having just experienced life, what I went through was not too bad, and most of it was in my own head, I found out. But yeah, I grew up, again, suburb of Boston. I was a Boy Scout. I did all right in school. I had ADD. My father had left when I was an infant and just was not there, right? And that was a big deal for me all throughout my childhood into, my teenage years and even young adulthood was, my dad abandoned me. Did he love me? Yada, yada. I'm a victim and everybody gets it and I don't get it. It's his fault. And the fact of the matter is my stepfather was in my life since when I was 5 and, has lived with us, since I was 5. He's still with my mother now. He raised me and loved me like his own son, but I never considered that at all. It was always, my dad wasn't there. And I often, as a kid, would think that that was part of the reason why I felt the way that I did. By the way, I don't normally sound like this. I got, some sort of throat thing the other day, and I lost my voice, and it hasn't come back. So I was like, I hope they have a microphone. So it may get worse as we go on, but again, I love hearing myself talk enough that I was willing to push through it for you guys. Yeah, I really, as a kid, and I mean, from as young as 5 years old, I have core memories of being absolutely obsessed with what other people thought of me, cripplingly so. I remember at a VFW function at 5 years old, disobeying my grandmother to go up and do the hokey pokey because I could not bring myself to do the hokey pokey in front of strangers because what might they think of me? And I don't think that that's a normal 5-year-old thought to have, but it was a thought that I had. And in social interactions, that's kind of what it was always like. I always felt like everybody else, their dad must have told them some secret of getting on and getting along that I didn't get. And I was the worse off for it. And everybody else just seemed to know what they were doing. And I didn't. And they seemed to get through life easier than I did. And everybody, we'd laugh and we'd joke and we'd poke fun. And it always felt like it was just fun with everybody else. But with me, it always felt like it was personal. I would make a joke and you would laugh. And I didn't feel like you were laughing with me. I felt like you were laughing at me. And I couldn't ever shake these thoughts. And I didn't really have these thoughts. I think that's important to say. I didn't have this insight on my life as a kid. It just was life, right? I didn't have this insight on my childhood as an adult. It was just life. I got this insight on, what I grew up with, in writing a 4-step. I learned this stuff in AA. Before that, it was just, this is what it's like. It is what it is. I was just never a terribly happy kid. I would obsess in social interactions about what you would think about what I was going to say. So, here's an example. I'm in a social situation. There's a group of us hanging out, and I don't even necessarily like everybody, but I really want them to like me. So I will think, okay, what are we talking about? What could I say in response to that would get, a favorable reaction from you guys? Okay, I might say this, and then, well, you might respond that way, and I don't know if that's going to be the good response. I don't know, maybe I'll say it this way, maybe I'll say it, and it always ended up the same way, right? I'm either just sitting there, looking weird because I'm turning stuff around in my head saying nothing until we move on to another subject and I just haven't said anything and now I have to start the whole process over, or I do get it out in time and I'm not a screenwriter. I don't write good dialogue, right? So when I rewrite the script that many times, it comes out sounding unnatural, So I say weird things, and then I feel weird, and I feel like everybody thinks that I'm weird, and maybe they do, maybe they don't. It doesn't really matter. That was kind of my default thought on anything I did. I think I've now drinking enough that I can, hold on. Okay. So yeah, that's kind of what I did, right? And that was just growing up Donnie. It was what it was. Every year, I never had I had the kids on my street that I hung out with, and I had the kids in class that I would hang out with, but I never really maintained these friendships, right? Next year, it's different kids in different classes, and I'll be chummy with those kids, and I'm a different person around them, and excuse me, too much seltzer. Maybe I should drink regular water. Pardon me, but and I've heard similar things in Alcoholics Anonymous, so I'm sure I'm not unique in this room of having felt that way, like this chameleon. I am a different person depending on who I'm around, and that just was life, right? And that's what it was, and I eventually found something that fixed that, right? And it's the great elixir that we all found, right? That got us in here. I found alcohol when I was 17 years old. I went to a trade high school. I learned the carpentry trade. I went on a work release from school and started banging nails over the summer. My 17th year, I was a wood framer, and I can tell you exactly where it was. It was a condo development in Whitman, Massachusetts called the Village of Auburnville, in Unit 5 on the left side. We were on that one day, and they said, Donnie, we got to stay late. Will you stay late? I said, sure, because I don't know how to say no to anything. And yeah, you want me to stay late? I'll stay late. And they said, don't worry, we're going to get beer. And I was like, cool. I've tried beer before. I stole my dad's, what were they, Miller High Lifes? Is it Miller High Life, the champagne of beers? Yeah, so that's what it was, because I remember the champagne of beers. I remember trying it. I poured it in a shot glass because my dad would drink shots. So I'm like, and this was young. I was probably 10 at the time. And I didn't like the taste, and then I remember rubbing peanut butter all over my clothes because I pretended to act drunk in front of my buddy and spilled beer all over myself and didn't want my clothes to smell like beer. Anyway, it was a whole thing. And I hadn't drank since. I'd smoked a little bit of pot, but that was really it. So this day, stayed late. It was hot. I was thirsty. I hadn't eaten lunch. They got beers. I drank one. It was great. It really quenched my thirst. I was parched. I had another. That was great. Started my third, and then that was it. Alcoholics Anonymous, I've always heard it's the first beer that gets me drunk. Just not my experience. I've had a beer. I've gone on dates and had one. I've had two. I've just never had three. It's the third beer for me. Every single time that I can recall in my entire life that I've ever had 3 drinks, my plans have changed. And they've always gone, well, this is what we're doing now. So I've had one, I've had two. When I drank again, we'll get back to that because that was my mistake. I had 2, and I was like, I must not be an alcoholic. But anyway, something happened. A weight rolled off my chest, and I didn't feel like this little scared boy working with men. I was laughing. I was saying what was on my mind without running it through the gambit that was my mind. When they laughed, they were laughing at me. But I didn't feel like they were laughing at me, and I didn't care that they were laughing at me because I thought I was saying stupid stuff too, and I was laughing at me, and I wasn't self-conscious about it, and I've never experienced anything like that in my life. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. It's the reason I got laid. It's the reason I realized you can get punched in the face and you won't die. It's the reason my life began at 17. It really is. I love alcohol. I would drink it if I could. My sponsor always says the same thing. If I could do it, I would. I promise you I would, because I like it. I've always liked the way I felt. I cannot manage my life and drink at the same time. And, I eventually got to the point where it was one or the other and I had to make a choice. But at that point, I started to live my life for the first time. I started to make real friends for the first time in my entire life. I'd had friends before, but because of how I was, I never knew I was doing this, but nobody could ever really get close to me before because I could never really be honest with anybody. I hope nobody else can see it. These lights make every little minuscule piece of spittle that I spit out. I can see it. I hope you guys can't see it. Well, it's coming. But so, I was able to be present in social situations in ways I'd never been able to do before, and I didn't really stand out. I stood out there at work. Those guys immediately noticed that I was drinking faster than all of them. And I was like, haha, like, yeah, it's so funny. I'm good at this. I drove home no problem. I didn't get a DUI. I didn't wreck. I guess any of those things could have happened, and they just didn't then. Lucky me. But yeah, I mean, that was it. Why would it was like being born with one leg, and then you get like an actual, effective prosthetic leg that allows you to run and jump like everybody else. Why would I ever want to go with one leg again? Like, I could not imagine ever going to a party without alcohol again. I could not imagine ever even attempting to talk to a girl without alcohol ever again. I couldn't imagine ever being in a group of people that I didn't know without it again. And I made it my mission never to do it, because I felt like I was at a disadvantage, and it just was what it was. And like I said, when I'm 17, everybody's puking, everybody's blacking out. It didn't really stand out, the things that were happening to me, right? But as I got older, people started to get sick of it, People got sick of it when I got my first apartment. I moved in with my roommate, and it was literally all I did. And I remember being 20 years old in that apartment and thinking, like, I have arrived. It's one of the things that I identified with in Bill's story. I wasn't whirling fat checks in and out of the till. Nobody had amused skepticism with me, but, I wasn't, going to the jazz places uptown. But I was 20 years old. I was a Boston union carpenter. I was making more money than my father, and my stepfather. I'm sure I was making more money than my father, too. But turns out he had been living in Texas, I found out. Down on the border in a double wide. But, I had a brand new truck. I had a beautiful girlfriend. I had finally lost my virginity at 20 years old. I had money in the bank. I had drugs. I had booze. I had friends that, hit me up. What are we doing? I had every single thing that as a 17, 18, 19-year-old, I told myself, if I could just get these things, I can be okay. The reason I feel the way I do is because everybody makes fun of me, because I'm the 19-year-old virgin. The reason I feel the way I do is because my mother is insane and I still live with her, and she is up my ass about everything that I do. It's because my truck is a piece of shit. It is because this, that, or the third. If I could just fix these external things about me, I would be able to go to sleep satisfied at night, which I don't do, right? And I got those things when I was 20, and that wasn't it. And I remember laying awake one night wondering if we should have a kid, or if I should ask her to marry me, or like what I need to do, because this ain't it, And, I just started paying a higher and higher price for the things that I was doing. I started wrecking trucks. I ended up, remember it was Halloween of 2018? No, 2008, 2018. Halloween of 2008, I drove my truck into the side of a house, and I drove into the side of a house, like, at full speed. Like, I woke up jumping the curb, and then I was airborne because the yard dropped down, and then last thing I remember is just vinyl siding, and it was all I could see. And, I've done some near misses drinking and driving before, but, like, I remember, like, yep, like, I'm cutting the wheel, but, like, I knew I was going to hit the house, right? Next thing I remember, I woke up, and the house felt like it was on top of me. This was up north, right? So there was a basement in the house. There was a stone and mortar foundation. The house was vacant, thank God. But my bumper had blown through the foundation and hit a gas line, and then the floor joists were running the way that I hit it. So, there was no break in that. The rest of my truck was pushed in. Steering wheel was jammed into me. Door was bent and basically welded shut. And I woke up with the house feeling like it's on top of me, the dash on top of me, and it's on fire. And I'm like, what am I going to do? Next thing I know, I'm outside of the truck. I don't remember how I got out of the truck. I still can't wrap my head around how I was physically able to get my leg around the way the steering wheel was, but I did it. And the neighbors came, and I'm like pouring bottles of water onto the fire. And they pulled me away, thank God, because tires ended up exploding. And it was a whole big thing. But I didn't get a DUI. Because I told them I had been drinking, and they arrested me for DWI, and then the doctor said, well, he clearly has a head injury. Look at him. Did you do anything? Did you test his blood? Did you do anything? Or are you just arresting him for DWI because bleeding from his head following a wreck, he said he'd had drinks that night. So they took my blood at like 9 a.m. and it was below the legal limit. So like I got out on a technicality. But I knew I should have had a DWI. I wasn't like, I knew there was no getting out of this, you know, when I was talking to the police. And I was never going to drink and drive again. And people laughed at me. You know, I told my friends, like, I'm never going to drink and drive again. And they laughed. They're like, okay. And I was offended. Like, you know, I mean, waking up in that wreck was very traumatic for me, you know, and it wasn't something I intended to do. I wasn't proud of it. You know, that's the only new vehicle I've ever bought. I was certainly upside down on it. You know, thank Christ my aunt was my insurance agent and got me more than state minimum liability. I sell insurance now, and I often think back, like, I wonder what kind of coverage I had, because there was never a lawsuit. Like, the house got rebuilt. You know, when I go home to visit, like, they got big giant rocks there now to, like, prevent people from going into it. But, you know, they did it. And, yeah, I couldn't believe the audacity of people after what I'd been through to say, you know, chuckle at the idea that I would, you know, never drink and drive again. Yet the next morning I got a ride into work from my mom. I was embarrassed about that. And then I got a ride home from one of the guys at work, and I picked up my rental car that night, and I was drunk when I picked it up, and I almost rear-ended a minivan on the way home. And I was ashamed. And then I wrecked it the next morning, because I'd continued to drink after I got home that night, and I'd overslept, and I was going to be late for work, and I was already late for work the day before, and it was this big deal. I wrecked my car. How's he going to get to work? Can we count on him? I don't know. Neither did they. So yeah, that sucked. And I honestly felt like I was just a victim of circumstance. Like, God, how much bad luck can a good guy get? You know, like, I'm just a good guy trying to do the right thing, you know, like, how much, and I would literally, one thing after another, things would blow up in my face. Relationships would just turn sour after one night of drinking, because I've never been physically abusive, but the things that I say when I finally get to the point where I lose control of my anger I'm deeply, to this day, you know, if I was to sit face to face with these women and talk to them about it, I'd feel deep shame. I've said things that are so hurtful that I knew saying them I could never take back, you know, and that was part of the issue I had, right? The book tells us, you know, when it explains the bedevilments, you know, that we can't control our emotional natures, and that was me. I would get angry, and I would say things knowing as I'm saying them that I can, once this is out, it can never come back. And they may forgive me, but they'll never forget how I made them feel tonight. And I can't help it. I have to get it out. It is like burning its way out of me, and I cannot just shut up. I cannot just accept that you don't want to talk about it now. I can't accept that what I said was inappropriate and you need to stew on it. No, I'm sorry now and I feel bad and you need to forgive me now. I'm just going to call. I'm going to call and I'm going to call and I'm going to call until you shut your phone up, and then I'm going to be out front. Like, that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to cry, and I'm going to tell you I'm going to kill myself, and I'm going to do whatever I have to do to get you to finally say, Donnie, it's okay, it's fine. Okay, thank you. Now I can go to bed. And I would do this shit in every relationship I had, you know, and wonder why they didn't last. And anyway, I'm getting too far into, you know, what it was like. It was shitty at the end is what it was like. I was suicidal. I was 22 years old. I was addicted to heroin. I was, you know, I wasn't drinking as much when I first got sober because they're not generally conducive with one another. But that's the only reason I wasn't drinking as much, because I was doing so much dope. And on the 4th of July in 2009, I got thrown out of my parents' house that I'd had to move back into because I'd lost the union job, and I'd lost the truck, and I'd lost the girl, and I'd lost the friends that I'd grown up with, and I'd lost the apartment. I'd lost the ability to take showers and brush my teeth regularly, and I'd lost the will to live. And I knew I couldn't stop because I'd known people that had gone to AA, and all they did was get out, get on Suboxone until they relapsed again. And that's what I thought Alcoholics Anonymous had to offer. I'd been here. Right, the Carpenters Union, before they threw me out, had sent me to Alcoholics Anonymous when I got thrown out of the training facility for drinking. You know, the audacity of them to do that. I'm framing circles around everybody else in training because I really should be a journeyman, but because I don't have union education, I have to go in as an apprentice, and I'm up on time and framing circles around everybody. I know how to lay out stairs, I know how to lay out rafters, but because I'm drinking and we're not supposed to, like, this is bullshit. And that's where I was at. She threw me out of the house and said, you can't live here. I can't want you to kill yourself, but I can put you in detox if you want to go. So I went. And this is how fucked up I was when I got in here. And pardon Is this like offensive that I swear? All right. Well, that's good. But so this is how fucked up I was when I got here, right? I go to Detox and they say, Donnie, you need to change people, places, and things. And I'm like, okay, like how is that possible, right? I'd never read this book, right? I didn't realize that, what I'm experiencing is, to the alcoholic, the alcoholic life seems the only normal life, and that's just where I'm at. But I'm like, what am I going to hang out with? The kid we made fun of in middle school, like, I don't know where that kid is. He's probably doing better than I am, but like, what am I going to hang with my mother? What do you mean? Like, everybody does drugs, everybody drinks. And then they said, Donnie, every single day is going to be a struggle and you're going to have to choose to stay clean and it's going to be this battle. And they didn't make it seem appealing to me. Like, when I left Detox, I was pretty hopeless. Like, there's really no point in even trying. Like, because I don't really want this. I just want to die. I just want the pain to be over. And if what you're telling me is every single day of my life is going to be watching out for triggers, you know what I mean, and making sure it's not icy and I might slip into a drink, like, and I might do all this work and it still might not work anyway, then what's the point, right? It didn't seem worth it to me, but then I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, right? And then Alcoholics Anonymous said, no, that's not what it's like. You're not even going to want to drink anymore. And I was like, well, I don't really want that, and like, it's kind of fucked up. Like, well, which one is it? Which one do you want? You can, there's, both of those are available in sobriety. You can do that. The every day's a struggle and what I mean, look at me, and you can do the, hey, I just live by spiritual principles and try not to lie. And, drinking is no longer an issue. You can have that too. But I didn't want either of them. I wanted my cake and I wanted to eat it too. And I came to Alcoholics Anonymous and I didn't believe in God and I didn't believe in the 12 steps. I came here to be a meeting maker because that's what they told me to do in Detox, just go to meetings. I said, I'll go to meetings. So I went to meetings, and 1 week turned into 4 weeks and I got my 30-day chip and that turned into 60 days and I had a job at my group and I was the greeter and everybody knew my name and everybody was so proud of me getting it so young, and I hated it. I hated Alcoholics Anonymous. I hated the people in here. Everybody was just, it was bullshit, I didn't have what you had. You didn't understand me. And the fact that you were proud of me and you were calling me lucky sucked. I'd have these guys that are, 65 years old, been sober for, 20 years, like, Donnie, you're so lucky you're getting it right now. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, you got married, you built a life, you got a house, like, you had a decent job, like, and you drank through all of it and you got sober when you were fucking old. Like, I'm 23 years old. Like, I have no idea if my dick will even work, if I could get laid again. Like, I don't even know how that'll even get to that point, and I'm terrified to because I don't know that I can even perform, and I have nothing. Like, I live at my parents' house. I give my mother my unemployment check and she drug tests me 3 times a week. Like, this is what I have. Like, so what if I'm taking showers? Like, I didn't feel lucky, right? And I wanted to drink every fucking day. And every day was, how many iced coffees am I going to drink? How many cigarettes am I going to smoke? How many meetings am I going to go to so I can stay sober? No, I don't need the big book. No, I don't believe in God. No, that won't work. I'll just keep making meetings. That's what I did. And then 60 days turned into 90 days. And right around 90 days, I became willing to start praying in the morning because I did get a sponsor and he recommended that. And I'd pray out loud because I didn't believe in God. And this idea that I heard in meetings that I could choose my own God pushed me away even further. And I just pray out loud, God, help me stay sober today, whatever. You might as, and in my head, I'm like, I might as well be praying to Santa Claus or the Tooth Fairy. Like, I was raised Irish Catholic. I had major issues with what I'd learned in Catholicism, with, the loving God, but I'm only loving to the few and only if they come here and pray this way. And, and I was like, this is kind of bullshit. You know what I mean? If God made everybody, wouldn't he love everybody? So I never read We Agnostics. I didn't realize that my whole uniqueness was addressed. And that was the issue I had, right? I'd rejected that idea of God, so I thought I'd rejected the God idea entirely. And at about 90 days, I knew I wasn't going to stay sober the next day. Like, I knew it. I knew I didn't want to get high and I didn't want to drink, but I knew I couldn't go to another Alcoholics Anonymous meeting where I sat down and maybe had to pee for the entire second half. We had hour-and-a-half meetings then. And, I'd piss my pants in an AA meeting before I'd get up. in the middle of a meeting. And it wasn't because, I thought it was disruptive. It was because I knew everybody would look at me and wonder why I wore a wife beater to an AA meeting, because it's hot. It felt like a good idea at the time, because I'm obsessed with what everybody, I haven't done anything to recover. I'm just abstaining from alcohol. So now I'm just the same restless, irritable, discontent, insecure kid I've always been, except I have 8 years of shame piled onto it, I was just fucked up. And I said a prayer that night. It was that morning. It was like 3 a.m. I'm smoking cigarettes on my parents' back porch reading Train Spotting. And I just said the first honest prayer I've ever said. I just said, I don't know who you are, what you are, if you are, but I don't want to get high tomorrow, and I absolutely know I will. I can't do this anymore. If there's anything to what these people are talking about, I need it, and I'll do whatever it takes. And it was the first humble, honest prayer I've ever said in my life, and I got results. The great clean wind of a mountaintop didn't blow through and through. I didn't tumble out of bed, with a booming voice saying, who would you say there is no God? I just had maybe 10 seconds of peace in my mind that I've never had outside of drugs or alcohol before that. And that was enough for me. I called my sponsor the next day. I said, let's do this. We started cracking that book. And, again, we read Bill's story, and I was able to identify him when I never felt I could. And we read more about alcoholism, and I was able to look at those things and realize that I am an alcoholic and not just a junkie, And we read We Agnostics, and I realized all the issues I had with the idea of a higher power were not unique to me or my generation. It wasn't because this shit was written in the 30s. That chapter addressed every single, high concept, smart thing I ever thought I had about God was addressed in that chapter. And the biggest thing for me was the biggest barrier I had was this make up my own God thing that I heard at meetings. And, he said, well, what actually is said is in Bill's story, Donnie, and he says, why don't you choose your own conception of God? And he's not telling Bill to make up God right now. He's saying, you don't have to choose the God that I believe in. You can make a beginning with whatever you're able to wrap your head around at this time. And he said, Donnie, what can you wrap your head around right now? And I said, Dave, I guess I no longer feel as confident that he doesn't exist. He said, that's enough. And I just prayed to this open concept, and that's what I did, and that worked. And I stayed sober, and I continued through the steps, and I had some pretty amazing experiences with amends, and I started to build self-esteem right through doing esteemable acts. And I got the courage to start behaving in a way that was counterproductive to what I'd always felt would get me what I needed. One of the biggest things that stuck out, there's this line in the book that says that I'm a victim of a delusion that I can wrest satisfaction out of life if only I can manage it well. And that word wrest was defined to me as to take by force. So I am a victim of a delusion, and the delusion is a persistent belief in an untrue fact, right? But the guy that's living in the delusion doesn't know that. I didn't know that what I was believing wasn't the truth. I was a victim of it. It's one of the only times they say you're a victim in this entire book. Not I'm a victim of my dad abandoning me, and I'm a victim of my cousin that molested me, or any of the other stuff that I felt like was such a big deal and so unique to me. That I can just wring satisfaction and contentment out of life if I make it look good and make you behave the way that I need you to behave when you are around me. And thank God that's not the case, because fuck, I've never been able to do that well. If I needed you to act right for me to be okay, I am fucked. And I was fucked my whole life. And I got well, and I started sponsoring guys, and I started getting asked to speak more in Alcoholics Anonymous. And my life got really good. Again, I got sober at 23 in 2009. I stayed sober for 4.5 years, and I didn't drink again because Alcoholics Anonymous doesn't work, and I didn't drink again because I stopped going to meetings. And I think that's important. And it's something that I always share as part of my story, right? Because I did drink again, right? And it wasn't because things were bad. I was 4.5 years sober. I was a training manager at my job. I worked in, executive level corporate management there at a very large company. I felt like I was pretty important there. I was getting asked to go speak and tell my story all around New England. I was running big book workshops. When you're in young people AA, especially 4.5 years, you feel like you got 20 years, in young people AA, which was pretty big out there. And I was sponsoring a lot of guys. I had a really cool girlfriend, she was hot shit. She lived in Charlestown, and, she was real highfalutin, and I felt pretty important. And I stopped working with new guys. I had the guys that I'd taken through that had recovered, and when guys would come to me and hear my story and ask me for help, I'd say, you'll get the same experience with Brendan. I just brought him to step 12. He needs to work with guys, work with him. So I had guys that had recovered that would call me a couple times a week and just, talk about high level, recovered alcoholic stuff. You know what I mean? Like, hey, this girl at work was kind of flirty with me and I kind of flirted back and I feel like shitty about it. Like, yeah, man, that's what we do. The line narrows. Like, what are you going to do about it? Stop. Okay, cool. Should I tell my wife? Probably not. Okay. It's funny. I got myself in that bind a couple weeks ago. But I wasn't working intensively with new guys anymore, and I wasn't taking regular inventory anymore. And I felt like I was doing a pretty damn good job, and I certainly felt like I was doing a better job than everybody else that I was around, right? So I didn't really need to. If you're all staying sober with what you're doing, then I'm good, and I wasn't doing majorly dishonest stuff. I just let it get to my head. I was resting on my laurels, right? And this girl, probably belongs here, but, it's not for me to decide. But she was certainly drinking too much for me. So, again, going to meetings every day, praying every day. I was doing all that stuff. I just wasn't working with new guys and I wasn't taking inventory, and the insanity of alcohol returned, right? And the insanity of alcohol was it felt like a good idea. I caught her drinking again behind my back and I said, I'm just going to go out and get drunk. And tell her it was her fault. Look what you did. And then I'll just go back to AA. So that's what I did. It came into my head and I did it. I didn't think about it. I didn't second guess it. I said, it's always about quality over quantity anyway. Who gives a shit? She is what's important. Marrying her is what's important. So it doesn't matter what anybody in AA thinks. So I went out and I had 2 beers. And then I called her and I lied to her that like it was such a struggle to get home and I want to turn around and the alcoholism is fighting me, like it was this tangible thing. And she cried and she felt terrible and I had succeeded in what I'd set out to do. Except I realized I couldn't go back to AA like that, right? I can't go back to AA and go like, Donnie, what happened? You went out. How bad? Tell us how bad it was. Like, I had 2 beers, I went home. I went to work the next day, it was fine. You can't though. It'll be terrible for you if you do it, I'm sure. And people had warned me when I came in that the worst thing that could ever happen if I drank would be nothing, and I didn't really know what they meant. I know now. I decided I must have just been a drug addict when I was a kid, you know what I mean? Like, I forgot that for me it had always been the 3rd beer, right? So I set out to put her mind at rest that it was okay for us to drink together now because all that we've realized is I'm not an alcoholic. And she's like, I don't know. All I've ever known about you is, Johnny AA over here, like this is kind of like, it's fine, okay. So we went out, the first time we went out, I ended up puking in her mother's shoebox in her mother's bedroom. Shortly thereafter, I'm puking purple wine up all over the door at her aunt's house on Christmas. And not too long after that, she is hysterically crying against the door of her hotel room at her brother's wedding while I'm walking by her mother saying, you need to get control of your daughter. She's being ridiculous. Basically, I burnt my life to the ground again. You know what I mean? It got as bad as it had ever been, right? Except I had a better job and I didn't lose it. So I was like, all right, it's all right. Not doing heroin again, but I was. Before I came to Texas, I was. She left me, that blew up in my face, came to Texas, right? Got a job opportunity. I said, I got nothing going on over here, let's go to Texas. Came to Texas, still lying to myself, saying I'm not an alcoholic, right? Because I'm holding the job. And it was very tough to tell myself I wasn't an alcoholic when I got to Texas. I paid extra. I was telling these guys about it in the parking lot. I paid extra on Tinder before I came here so that I could change my location here and get myself set up, right? So I had a date the night I got here. I was here, not in this church, but in this area of Dallas. I forget the name of the place. It was like across the street from a Kroger or something. But it was a nice apartment complex, And she was like the only straight woman in the whole complex. It was just like, it was like the Tower of the Gays. And I loved it. I got so much attention. I was like, this is the best. I got laid the night I got here. We're out in the pool area. Everybody's friends with me. You know what I mean? Like, this is awesome. Like, I love Dallas, And then, I got here June 5th, I think. 4th of July, she was done with me, you know, but I'd made a bunch of friends at that apartment complex and they still wanted me to come hang out. So I was like, fuck her. She doesn't own the apartment. I'm going to come hang out. You know, so I kept coming hanging out, and then I had a whole incident on mushrooms in the pool, and I'd puked in the eating area, and then like passed out in the shower, and then I wasn't welcome back. And I was like, it's probably not appropriate to come back anyway. She really doesn't like that I keep coming here. So I stopped. I started drinking alone in my apartment, right? And then I started feeling like a drunk. I don't know why I'm incapable of like my trash was next to my fridge and my beers were in my fridge. So why I couldn't take the empty that I finished to the fridge and throw it in the trash, I don't know, but I never did. I'd wake up with like 40 beers on my coffee table and I was like, man, I'm starting to feel like an alcoholic. I got to stop drinking this way. So then I started drinking Bloody Marys. And it'd be the same thing. I'd buy on like a Monday, I'd buy like this big thing of, I think it was Absolute, but I can't remember. I know it was a big thing of 100 proof, not very high quality vodka and Bloody Mary mix. And I'd drink Bloody Marys. My Bloody Marys were very much more vodka than they were Mary mix. You know, they were never that spicy. And I'd buy that on a Monday, and on Tuesday at like 10 o'clock, I was out of vodka. And I couldn't buy more vodka at that time. I could only buy beer, and I'd be pissed. And I wouldn't oversleep for work, and I wouldn't wake up hungover. And I would start to think, man, this is not normal. You know, I'm starting to feel like an alcoholic drinking like this. You know, I'll drink wine. So I started drinking wine. And then I started, you know, before long, I was like, yeah, you know, drinking 3 bottles of wine on a weeknight is not normal. I'm starting to feel like an alcoholic. I'll drink wine in a box, you know, because you can't count it. You can't see it. It's just, it's there and then it's gone, and who knows how quick it went, you know? And that's what I would do. And my last drink was, I was seeing this girl in Denton, and we'd met her friends the night before. This was a Friday night. We'd met them out at a bar in Denton. She drove drunk and got in a fucking wreck, but it was somebody else's fault. I remember like thinking like, and you think I got a problem? Because she immediately, she was like, hey, everybody loved you. Like everybody thought you were super funny, but every single person commented on your drinking. And I'm like, well, why? Were we not out for drinks? She's like, yeah, but like, do you not know? And I was like, no. Like, why? How do you drink any other way? Like, is this not what we are doing? Like, because that's how it is for me, right? If I'm drinking, that's what I'm doing. You can be there, and I'll make jokes while we're doing it, but that's what we're doing, you know, and there's nothing else that we're doing. So she had issue with it. So I said, all right, well, you know, I'm going to go home. We got this cornhole thing, you know, and I was living on Vitruvian Park in Addison at the time. And we had this cornhole thing at the Ice House across the street. And I was like, well, we got the cornhole thing, so I'll see you there for that. Okay. So I came home. I had my box of wine. And I'm like, all right, well, she's got an issue with my drinking, so let's get the drinking done before she gets here. So I remember I filled this big orange juice glass with wine, and I chugged it and then puked purple wine up all over my shower curtain. So I threw my shower curtain away, and then I had another one. And then we went to that thing, and I ignored her the entire time, and I drank all my free drinks, and I drank all her free drinks, and then I drank all the drinks I could afford, and then I drank all the drinks I could get from all the friends that I'd made, because that's what I do, because that's what I was there for. And we were supposed to hang out that night, but my buddy, there was some free concert in Carrollton, and my buddy owed me $40, and he was there. So I lied to her and said, oh, no, I got this thing to do. We're not hanging out tonight. I'm going over there. Went over there, drank more. Long story short, I ended up getting home at like 2:30 in the morning. I was exhausted. It had been a hot day, right? It had been a long day, and it had been a long day of drinking. I've been drinking since probably 9 a.m., and it's now, I don't know, 2:30 in the morning. Driven home drunk, felt terrible about that. I remember walking down the hallway of my apartment against the wall because I couldn't walk straight, laying down, exhausted, and opening my eyes and going, there's still wine in that box. And I could not go to sleep knowing there was wine in the box. And that was when I was just like, what's going to have to happen, Donnie? Am I going to have to kill somebody here in Texas? Am I going to have to lose my job? Because I've already had 2 Mondays since I've been here, and I haven't been here a terribly long time, where I've no call, no show, disappeared because I tried meth and like had 72-hour odysseys on Jupiter Road and crazy things. Crazy things happen that aren't appropriate to tell at the podium. You know, is that what's going to have to happen, or can I just suck it up and go and do it? You know. And I started crying, and I made some calls, and I got put in contact with a guy, Primary Purpose, and he said, hey, man, we meet these nights, and you probably shouldn't wait till then to go to a meeting. It was funny. It was Myers Raymer. And I was like, oh, I used to listen to your brother all the time and get all pumped up and then like, spit big book at people from podiums. And like, really, it wasn't good for me. And so I went back to AA. I went to AA that morning, the Addison group, and I cried and I said I'm an alcoholic, and came back the next day. And, people have asked me a lot of times, like, okay, you're somebody that had some time and went out and came back and you just stayed sober, right? You didn't go in and out and in and out and in and out when you came back. And what did you do? And the answer is simply I did what I was told when I came back. I didn't try to find the perfect sponsor that studied the big book like I used to study the big book. I didn't question the way they did it because I used to do it differently. I just came and I found the first guy that seemed to have half an idea of what he was doing. And I said, hey man, I need help. Will you take me through the steps again? He said, sure. I couldn't wait to show him my big book, right? It's the big book I take guys through the step with again. It's my old, big book that I've had for years. He goes, yeah, why don't you get a new one? We'll have a new experience. I was like, fuck, all right. So I did that. And, when he wrote fear inventory different than I did, I just wrote fear inventory the way he asked me to. And when we made amends and he, suggested some amends that I was like, well, I might have done them this way. I just did what I was told. I went to meetings every day. I didn't think I didn't need to do 90 and 90 because I'd already done 90 and 90 and I knew what it was all about. I just did what I was told and I shut up because I had nothing else going on. And, I got sober again. I stayed sober. That was November 10th of 2015. And, since then, I met my wife sober. She's never seen me drink. She's a normie, which sometimes I'm like glad, and then sometimes I'm like, not glad, because sometimes I wish I could be like, we have a way in AA that we could do this. And she's done that to me before. Like, I'm upset about this. And I'm like, well, why are you upset about that? Why do you give a fuck what they think? Why don't you ask yourself? And she's like, you don't need to talk to me like you talk to the guys that you help. Sometimes you just need to listen. And I'm like, I get that. But you got to kind of remember that this is my default thing. This is all I do. So like maybe call your girlfriends, because I got solutions, or at least I think I do, but, I've got a job that counts on me. I can be there. Some of the things that are great, Alcoholics Anonymous gave me the ability to do things that I didn't want to do. I could never do that before. Like I could be on the last string of a job and I'd be driving into work like worried about being there on time because I'm going to get fired if I have one or two more things. And the thought pops into my head, fuck going to work today. And I could not go to work that day. Like if I decided I didn't want to do something, or the thought, I could not bring myself to do things I didn't want to do, regardless of what it cost, and I'd make up elaborate lies. I remember the day that it brought this up. Like I called and said, my mother must be allergic to bees. I don't know. I got a call. She got stung by a bee. She's in the emergency room. Like, I don't know. I'm sure they didn't believe it. They were like, okay, I guess we won't see Donnie today. I can do things I don't want to do today. I can be there when I say I'm going to be there. I can listen to somebody tell me that I hurt them or I was wrong without getting defensive and trying to gaslight them and tell them, well, I might be wrong, but it's because of you. I can foster healthy relationships today when I never could. Ever in my life before this. And I have the ability to work with other men and help guys, get sober. And it's been one of the most beautiful experiences I've ever had. And there's a thing I want to read in the book, right? Because this is what I think is one of the biggest reasons why going to meetings every day, I wasn't going every day, but I was going like to 4 meetings a week, still praying, like being very active in AA. I drank. And it's from Bill's story. And it's some instructions that he got from Ebby. My friend had emphasized the absolute necessity of demonstrating these principles in all my affairs, and particularly was an imperative to work with others as he had worked with me. Faith without works was dead, he said, and how appallingly true for the alcoholic. For if an alcoholic failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life, how? Through work and self-sacrifice for others, he could not survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. If he did not work, he would surely drink again, and if he drank, he would surely die. Then faith would be dead indeed, and with us it is just like that. Now, I think words are important, and I didn't know them nearly as well as I thought I did, just because I could use them in a sentence and not get called out for what are you talking about. So that word imperative is defined as being of vital importance and crucial. And what's imperative? Well, it's imperative to work with others as he had worked with me. Vital is absolutely necessary or important, essential. Crucial is decisive or critical, especially in the success or failure of something. And decisive is settling an issue, producing a definite result. So it was imperative to work with others as he had worked with me. Why? Because if I failed to perfect and enlarge my spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others, I could not survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. If I don't do the work, I'll drink again, and if I drink, I'll die. And that I've proven that to be true for myself, right? At 4.5 years sober, I was just as sober as I was ever going to get. I could have been 40 years sober. I wasn't going to be any more sober than I was at 4.5 years or at 4.5 months when I, started making amends, learned to do 10, 11, and 12, and started working with others. I'm still pretty self-centered. I'm just aware of it now in a way that I wasn't before. I would still love to sit back and play Xbox and enjoy my weekends. I work probably, 50 to 60 hours a week at work. I go to meetings, I sponsor other guys, I answer the phone when it rings, and I make sure I give time to my wife, and we're looking for a fucking house, and it sucks. I would love to be able to just have more me time, right? But I have proven to myself that when I give myself that me time, when I have opportunities to be of service, I just don't enjoy it. I get into my own head. I start judging other people and start being a little shithead and start really being an egotistical dildo. And I'm not as good a person, I don't do what I do for others because of becoming a saint in Alcoholics Anonymous. I do it because the only way I found that I can enjoy the time that I do have is to give the time that's available, I still have to manage my time, right? I can't just neglect my wife and say, sorry, the whole world needs to be saved, right? And there's nobody else that can do it like Donnie can, so, you're going to have to fucking take it. That's not the truth either, but the only way that I can enjoy the time I have is through this, and I've proven that to myself, and I'm happy with that, right? Like, Alcoholics Anonymous has absolutely given me a life that I could never have imagined. Had I not had an allergy to alcohol and just been who I was mentally, I'd just be a weird fucking sad dude that would probably die alone. You know what I mean? That's just who I'd be. I'd be an asshole, I'm still an asshole, but I know I'm an asshole, and before I didn't, and I think that's important. I don't know. I feel like I could have said a couple things and gotten to my point maybe a couple minutes later and felt better about perfectly ending it on time. But at this point, if I tried to, I'd just ramble on for a minute, and I think that's fucking pointless. So anyway, Stephen, thanks again for asking me to come. And that's it.